split. You know, we have part of us in the office and part of us working at home, and we flip like every other day. So of course, Shannon's in her monastery. So
maybe I can just take a picture of my background and I'll always be at home on Zoom. You know, like when I'm in the office, I can be at home. And then I can do vice versa. I can take a picture in the office.
Yeah.
Then I'm at home. Who will know? No one will know.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a surprise. Okay, it's right at 11:01. We're going to go ahead and get started. Nicole's going to lead us in prayer. I sent everybody an agenda. So did y'all get a copy of that?
Yes.
Okay, good. We'll follow that. I mean, it's just a guideline for us, but if any other things come up too, you know, as we're going along, just interject. This is just an open forum today. So we're to kind of go through some things that have been brought to me by other DREs that can't be here today. And then we'll talk about things that are happening in your parishes. These have been real productive and very helpful. So I just want to thank everybody for coming. I know you're busy and you have other meetings too. So this is just a really good chance. If you can't come, you know, we always record it and send it to you. And of course, we're always an email and a phone call away. So, hey, Angela. Morning, sweetie. Okay, so Nicole's going to start us in prayer.
Okay, so prayer this week is from my guy, JP2. His feast day is on the 22nd, which is on Thursday. So yeah, it's been JP2 week for me, John Paul II week. So we're going to pray his prayer Totus Tuus, which is his prayer to Mary. It's a beautiful prayer. But before we start, does anybody want to share their intentions for their week, for their day?
For a successful surgery for my husband.
I have a student who had surgery yesterday, one of my Christian formation students, for healing for her.
I'm going to pray for Denise Livier's daughter, who's not feeling well this morning. So I'm going to pray for Lizette.
And all of those who are still suffering from the effects of Hurricane Laura and
I'd like to pray this morning for the Catholics that are being persecuted in Chile, as well as prayer for me and my family.
Okay, well, we're going to take all of these intentions and we are going to lay them at the foot of our Lord's cross as we pray in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Immaculate Conception, Mary, my mother, live in me, act in me, speak in me and through me. Think your thoughts in my mind, love through my heart. Give me your dispositions and feelings. Teach, lead me, and guide me to Jesus. Correct, enlighten, and expand my thoughts and behavior. Possess my soul. Take over my entire personality and life. Replace it with yourself. Incline me to your constant adoration. Pray in me and through me. Let me live in you and keep in this union always. For all these prayers that we hold in our heart for this prayer, we pray. Amen.
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 Thank you, Nicole. Michaelin came on. Hey, Miss Michaelin.
Hello.
So I just want to tell Michaelin and Marlene that our prayers have been with you, both of you, during this time of loss, and that we love you very, very much, and know that our prayers continue to be with both of you during this very difficult time. And of course, Michaelin, with your mom too, and Marlene with your parents and your family. So I'm so happy to see your face, and glad you're here. So anything that we can do to help, reach out to you, support you, definitely have our prayers. So one day at a time, kiddo, right? Okay. So I just wanted to do introductions. I think everybody knows everyone here today. And our staff, we have Nicole and Shannon and Wes. Barry wasn't feeling well today, so hopefully he can hop on with us. As you know, Barry put in his resignation on, I'm saying that with a fake smile, last week. He's accepted a position of formation, director of formation for the Society of St. Vincent de Paul in St. Louis, Missouri. It's a good opportunity for him. We're going to certainly miss him and wish him all the best. We're working to revise the job description just to update it, tweak it, and we'll be posting that upon pending approval of the rehire. So our prayers are with Barry for sure. He has done an incredible job in the Office of Evangelization Catechesis, and particularly for the whole chancery as technology has advanced leaps and bounds. So we're so grateful to have him. And he has a depth of theological knowledge as well as a heart of pastoral care and ministry, which I think is something that has really been driving him. So really happy for Barry and his move. Really bittersweet for us too. You know, you love to see people move on, but at the same time, you hate to miss the family and the friendship and all that. So we'll be spoiling him through November, and then hopefully help him transition. He'll take off December, and then he'll start his new job in St. Louis in January. So, and I saw Melissa just hopped on. Hey, Melissa, welcome. So I wanted to see if anybody had any questions or any thoughts about the Credible Catholic seminar. Does anybody have any follow-up or need any follow-up with the Credible Catholic seminar? Any questions about the curriculum, access? What did you think about it? If you watched the video or you came, any feedback on that?
I enjoyed the seminar. I like when you guys said that we would be doing a seminar on Credible Catholic. I'm a huge Father Robert Spitzer fan, and I think that is a gap that we're missing. Is a lot of these kids are having trouble with their faith because we don't incorporate the science into it. So we don't. I don't know. I feel like that it was super insightful because we do. That's a gap that a lot of us don't talk about. We just talk about the faith, why we love God and all the things God does, but we have to talk about science. Like we can answer any questions if we incorporate science into it. So I loved it. I'm pumped about it.
That's good. Thanks, Jackie. Yeah, you're right too. In ministry, we cling a lot to the text and then do a lot of practical applications, but faith and science and the complementarity between the two is something that's been around for so long. It's just now getting a little bit more pressing because it's causing people to move toward a more atheistic approach to life. And in reality, we know that that's, not the case. Faith and science do go together. They complement each other. And, like my daughter said in a very simple way, Mom, God is science, so how to explain that to people who were scientists and calling them, to the giftedness of faith. My husband's grandfather was an extraordinary physicist for the University of Michigan. He actually has a building named after him, and he did a lot of work on the science behind the jamming devices during World War II. So whenever the radars and the communication devices were jammed, he was a part of all that science. And I don't know anything about any of that, but I do know that he practiced, his faith. He was Episcopalian. And so he always had this humble approach to all the work that he did in the realm of science. So I was always impressed to hear about Dr. Dow and all the things. We actually have one of the students loved him so much, he made a bust of Dr. Dow. So it's in my living room. So if you ever come by, you'll see my grandfather-in-law kind of, modeling that, what it means to be a scientist, and also at the same time, humble yourself before the Lord. So I just saw somebody hop in that I hadn't seen. Early. Trisha came in. Hey, Trisha. And Cassie. Cassie just came in. Hey, Cassie. We were just revisiting the Credible Catholic webinar on faith and science. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? Jackie, have you dove into the curriculum yet? Like, what are you doing next step?
Some of the like we were laughing, me and Father Joe are on the side laughing because like one of the videos was super good. When you open it, it started with a clip of The Simpsons, and it was like, I guess it was Bart saying like, well, what happens to your soul? We don't have a soul. And it was just kind of an icebreaker So I don't know, it made it fun. But I'm looking into it. A lot of it, like when we got into the seminar, like the second half of the seminar, a lot of it was like not,
Yeah.
I mean, I would enjoy sitting and watching it recreationally, but in the classroom, I need to sit with it and maybe I can take bits and pieces of it and apply it. Cause I mean, it's great material. It really is. So I don't know if I would do a full curriculum, but I haven't had time to look at it. So I need time to assess it. But I definitely plan on incorporating it where I can, because all of the videos you can watch at any time. They're all available free. So I'll look
Yeah.
into it though. But I'd like to hear what anybody else has to say about it if they've tried it.
Anybody else that had a chance to look at it? I know the biggest thing is, like you just said, Jackie, to really just experience it yourself and see how you can highlight that along the way. It wouldn't replace anything that you're doing, but it would just complement and kind of add to those moments of when. So taking those particular curriculums, what I like about them is that the audio is already there. So you can either explain it or you let the audio explain it for you. And so the creativity in the PowerPoints and the presentation seems to be, you know, very good for those of us who may not necessarily have a science background, you know, maybe an interest in science, but not a full science background. And it answers a lot of questions too. So whenever you have time, you know, take a moment and at least look at module 1 and see how that can, you know, feed through. What I found most interesting is that there was such a reception from the priests and the deacons. So we had more responses from our priests and deacons than we had in any of our workshops. So I thought that was very telling too. So if your priest hasn't watched it, or if you haven't shared that or seen, you know, kind of encourage them, because this can help them in their homilies too, or when questions come up. So it's a great resource. It's free, and they're doing a whole lot of more work too. There's more things coming out in January from the Maji Center. And of course, Ashley's always an email away. She's very good, very receptive, and she answers questions at the stop of a finger. Another thing, just, go ahead.
I was going to say, so I haven't had a chance to view it yet, but I am going to. And I was going to say that we're in the process of interviewing our confirmation candidates right now. And Father Matt at Mass told me on Thursday that one of the candidates that he interviewed had an entire list of science questions to ask him because of the conflicting thoughts that she was having and how can she tie the two together. So it really is prevalent in a lot of the kids' minds. And part of our confirmation process here is we allow our kids to write down 1 or 2 questions they're struggling with in the faith. And then we take those questions and we have the kids answer those questions using their UCAT. That's the first source they go to because they're all given a UCAT at confirmation, and the DCAT, which they're given as well. And we encourage them to use their UCAT and their DCAT and then other reputable sites to go to search for answers. And we allow the candidates to answer each other's questions. It's anonymous questions, but they're each assigned 1 question to answer. And then we go through the discussion throughout our classes to try and meet the needs to see if the kids' questions can be answered. So it's amazing to see how many questions we have about science that come up that the kids really are trying to struggle with, you know, and how can they fit that? How can we believe this, you know, if we really can't see or whatever? Evolution, you know, all of those things. So I'm going to watch it. I just haven't yet to see if I can incorporate some of that too in our curriculum.
Yeah, and that can be a good reference point for them too when they're searching for their answers, is to go send them to that curriculum. She sent us a list. I'm pretty sure it's on the link, the follow-up link of like top questions that people ask Father Spitzer. Mm-hmm. So I think that would kind of serve as a good resource for them too. That's a great idea. I like the way that you are allowing them to ask questions. So I'm guessing they put those all into a hat. They're assigned, then they pick a question or 2, and then they have to go find the answers. That is a great idea. I just wrote that down. Yeah, It's a really good idea.
Yeah.
It's teaching them apologetics. It's teaching them how to find good, solid resources too, to respond to the tough questions.
Yes.
Very
Give
good.
them the sites that we want them to go to. We don't want them just surfing the internet. We actually talk about, like in English class, when you're actually doing a research paper, you want to up. On Zoom, I don't know what happened. But
We got
anyway,
you.
yeah, we teach English, those credible sources, and then so we do the same thing with the Catholic faith and try and tie that in. It's really good. It generates a lot of really good discussion within the classroom among engaging them in conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's fantastic. Any other thoughts on Credible Catholic? Okay, y'all be hearing more from that. It's something that I'm really going to encourage you guys. It would be fun to have a day where we could all sit down and kind of watch the modules together. So maybe, one day, whenever we can get together, I think that conversation would be good to have in person. So, nothing that we have to do at this second, but something that we can look forward to. Also sent you a link yesterday. Father Tom Brenzino asked if we would forward the USCCB survey link.
Okay.
So make sure that you guys take the survey and share it with anybody that's in ministry. I think they're looking to gather a lot of information. And so please feel free to share that with people that work in pastoral ministry to help kind of give some really good in the field responses instead of people trying to guess what's happening. So their voices will be heard. All right, let's move on to our share portion. So support, help, affirmation of our religious educators. And the first area is support. Denise Louvier, who can't be here today, but called me, asked me to see if we could revisit how you all are implementing the reconciliation sacrament either this fall or in the spring. So can somebody talk about that? They're trying to think about logistics. I know we talked about this before. And so she was just curious to see how you all were doing that. So just kind of wave and let me know when you're ready to share. Michaelin?
Yeah, Father Trey decided that just because of all of the rescheduling that a lot of priests are having to do, weddings that are rescheduled and other sacraments, that he didn't want to have that on all of their plates to have another thing that they had to come to. And in case the social distancing thing was still going on, which it looks like it will be because ours is scheduled for November 11th, he decided that our homeschool and PSR program is still going to do it on November 11th with just him. And then we've segmented out 2 weeks after that for different times for the school kids to sign up through a Sign Up Genius to go with him. That way he gets to spend a little bit more time with each of them, and he actually gets to spend time with each of our kids instead of only like 15 out of the 80. And that way it's not rushed, because usually we do almost 80 in a little less than an hour because we have 6 or 7 priests. And when they did their planning meeting, there were a lot of conflicting dates. So he's just going to do all of them, and they're going to be on separate dates.
Okay. Are y'all adding any reconciliation times for him to do that? Is he able to do that? Are you going within the times that are already set aside?
We're doing within the times that are already set aside, but he added once a week for a couple weeks for the kids.
How many are y'all going to schedule per gather? Like how many do you have total, and how many is he going to add to those?
We have 76 altogether, and he's willing to do like between 10 and 15, but not more than that because he wants to be able to like actually spend time with them. But we're settling on hopefully 10.
Are you, is he inviting the parents to make a reconciliation too?
Yeah, and we do that during our normal time anyway. We just ask that the families that want to go, like siblings or parents, just stay towards the back so that they actually have time and they're not cutting through. But we find that we have a lot of parents that haven't been in years, or siblings that haven't been in a while, and they want to go, and then it's just really rushed. So this way they actually have time and the opportunity to do that.
That's great. Thank you. Trisha?
I'm sorry. Can y'all hear me okay?
We can. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm sorry I got on a little bit later, but I'm happy to be here. So the way St. Aloysius is going to celebrate First Reconciliation this year, normally we would do it as a communal in-person celebration, where the parents and the children and other siblings would be invited. And, due to the concerns, the COVID concerns, we've decided So first of all, our afternoon of reflection and parent meeting, we actually have done a video presentation, and we'll be emailing that to our parents, most likely the end of this week. And then the way Father Randy will hear the school children's reconciliation, he will actually hear their confessions during their school day. Unfortunately, the parents are not going to be invited. And then as far as for our PSR children, he will hear their confession. We're going to choose a Saturday in January. Now, their parents obviously will need to be there just because, they can't just drop their children off, but only the children will be able to go to confession. And again, this was a very hard decision for us. We're actually doing PSR online, and a lot of our families have had concerns for this, especially the families that are having to prepare their children for first reconciliation in Eucharist. Now, our second grade catechist is following up with them, giving them information and helping them to go along the journey. But it's been hard, y'all. I have to be honest with you. It's going to happen, but it's just different, and we're trying to just take each day and do our best to do what we have to do. As far as how many students, I think we have about 150 students this year who will be receiving first reconciliation and first Eucharist.
Mm-hmm. How is he going to pull them out of the classroom during their religion class, or just
during their religion class? That's exactly right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tell me what the parents are talking about. Like, what are their worries? The PSR parents are worried. Is that what you're saying? They're struggling?
I think the biggest concern is that, their children they've always dropped their children off on Sunday mornings, PSR families, to come to the classes. And, we're just not able to do that this year. And I think they're concerned there. A lot of them have more than one child. And the idea of having to work with 3 different children, 3 different grade levels with the materials, they're concerned they're not going to be able to handle it, basically. In fact, a couple of our families, actually, their children, they're going to be taking the classes at Our Lady of Mercy, because I think Our Lady of Mercy is doing the online, is doing the class, in-person classes. For us, not having PSR in person, the biggest thing is because of the numbers of PSR and having to make sure everything is sanitized, because we use the school classrooms, and having it sanitized before they come in and then after they go, and then for the next morning for the school classes to resume in those classrooms. So yeah, it's, we have their books for the families to come and pick up from our pastoral service center. And I've sent email after email. I probably have about 50 books that are still sitting out front, because the parents, either they haven't had time to come get them, or they've signed their child up for the classes, but I don't know. I think people are busy. People are trying to, make this time a normal time, and it's just hard.
How many young people do you have in Parish School of Religion?
I think I've got registered. I have about 115. I normally have about 106, 150, depending on the year.
Okay.
And this is 1st through 6th grade.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're not picking up their workbooks in general?
Well, I think the fact that we're used to coming to a parent meeting, receiving the children's books, the children come in the class, bringing the books back and forth. I think it's hard for them to, our hours here are from 8 a.m. until 4. I'm very accommodating. I tell them, I said, if you need me, I'll bring them to your house. But a lot of them, they just haven't responded to it. The 2nd grade books, the class is the one that I'm most concerned for, because I want those children to be prepared for when they receive their first reconciliation in January. The other classes, they'll have time to finish the materials all the way up. I've asked them to have them finished before Easter, but it's those sweet little 2nd graders that that we really want to take care of.
Yeah, it is difficult for people to get to parish offices with the business hours. I just personally, I have I ordered face masks at our parish because they have a little logo.
Oh, yeah.
And the secretary finally said, "Do you want me to leave them in the sacristy? Because I know you come to mass." And I'm like, "Yeah, can you leave them in the sacristy?"
Yeah.
That seems to be the drop-off point for us. So,
Well, eventually, I think we're going to have to just bite the bullet and probably just mail it to them. You know, especially if people if they just can't do it, if I can't bring it to their homes or whatever. So
yeah.
we're taking it each day and doing our best, you know.
And that's what you can hope for too.
Yeah.
Melissa.
I just kind of wanted to offer, maybe there's some hope in the next couple of weeks for that. This is what I'm banking on. You know, if we think about our public school kids have not had a full week of school yet. You know, even though they went back to school 5 days a week, 2 weeks ago, there was a hurricane day. And then last week we have fall break. And our middle school and high school kids, this is their first full week back at school. And so maybe, you know, I mean, for some of those parents, for a lot of those parents, that's just so much, the back and the forth with only 2 days a week. And then the virtual, I've heard the virtual was just insane. My kid's only in pre-K, so virtual wasn't too bad. But I know for my middle schoolers, even elementary school kids, the virtual school day was literally just on a computer all day. And that was just a huge struggle for families. So hopefully there's some hope in the kids being back at school and finally being able to get to some normal, you know, some normal schedule. Because especially for you know, those of you with your Catholic schools, I know my older one is in Catholic school, it seems like the world is normal because, you know, our Catholic school kids, we see them and they're in school every day, but it's just not the same for our public school families. And I know that's who a lot of us are serving through PSR. So maybe in the next couple of weeks, their world will calm down and they'll be a little more receptive to adding something else.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Melissa, you know, because we've been seeing the Catholic schools and full-time since the beginning. But yeah, just this week, the school zone signs started flashing again in EBR. I know some of the outlying parishes, the schools were still kind of, you know, staggered. But, you know, it's everybody's trying to find some type of normalcy and consistency and routine, and it keeps changing. You know, so that's a good point. And I guess patience, you know, would be a good thing on our point too. I know everybody's very patient. And but we do kind of worry. It's like, okay, it's getting to be November now. But I do think that once, you know, the parents get a hold of just some type of normalcy as far as consistency and not worried about online school to the extent that it has been, that once the faith is put in their hands and those books are, it's not going to take them too long to help walk their children through that, you know. And it kind of gives me a chuckle because, again, we've always wanted the parents to be those first formators of faith. So it's watch what we wish for. Not that we would ever wish it in a pandemic, but at the same time too, the silver lining is these parents have those books in their hands and they're going to be formed on whatever level the children are formed. So I think that there's a lot of hope in that too. So we can look on, you know me, I'm the eternal optimist. So I think that that's a gifted thing. So stay, you know, just stay on task. Tricia, I mean, they'll come. And if not, maybe Father Randy could call them and say, hey, come get your books. So
That's a good idea, because actually with the announcements at the masses, that's going to be one of the reminders for the end of mass reminders. So
Father Randy has your books.
Clergy, you know, yeah.
Come to the confessional and pick them up.
Hey, Dina.
Thank you.
Okay.
Dina.
Hey, Marlene.
Hey, I just wanted to share what we're doing at St. John.
Okay.
So for our PSR, we have about 750 students enrolled in a Family of Faith program. We're using Sophia Institutes. Yeah. We tweaked it. I'm sorry, it's 1st through 8th grade. We just did all of them the same. So we have parents only coming once a month. We have several meetings. We come to the activity center. We space the chairs apart. We put a index card in each chair, any paperwork in each chair. So all you gotta do is walk in, sit down, nobody's congregating. One of the priests teaches the lesson for the month. And then for our, they go home and they do 2 lessons at home. So we tweaked the actual program because there's supposed to be a second meeting, community meeting. So we left the community meeting out, and are just focusing on parents doing the best that we can with a lot of grace and mercy. We're just trying to do this the best that we can. So we're inviting everybody in as much as possible. Look, I didn't do last month. Like, it's okay. Start fresh. Let's go from here. Everybody's overwhelmed and trying to figure it out. But for First Rec, we kind of did the same thing. We set the chairs, we set a table out. Well, for the parent meeting, it was just the parents. So we had the chair with the book in the chair, an index card to tell me who was there, any other paperwork that they needed. We did registration online ahead of time. So when they got there, there was no sign in, no congregating, none of that. And so then we have one parent session, parent-child session that we usually have. So we did that. We set up, we divided out, we offered 3 different sessions, and we set up a table per family, spaced apart. And so everything was on their table when they got there, their index card, their, anything they needed. And if they needed a book or whatever, they could just see me after the meeting, and I took care of that, or Brady, or, so that's how we're trying to make it work right now. Emily Froba is my director of First Rec, and she kind of gave parents some guidance on doing both of the programs together. I feel like that is still a little overwhelming for families, so we are working on that as well.
When is First Reconciliation, Marlene?
So Father has it set for November 17th and 18th. So we'll see if what's going to happen with that. But I like the idea of how Michaelin talked about. He did say that if we couldn't get extra priests at that time, that's how we did First Communion this year. We just signed up for different masses, up to 5 families per mass, and it was really actually better than in the past. So kind of looking at keeping that the same, even if things change, maybe tweaking it somewhat where you can allow a greater number, because we had every other pew and that kind of thing. So if we don't have that, then we could do maybe 10 kids at a First Communion. We have, I think, around 140 children in that program right now.
Wow.
So
yeah, it's amazing how we're kind of learning about things during a pandemic that may actually end up being something that's consistent and formation and preparation afterwards. Because it's good for them to be formed in the community, but it's also good for them to receive their sacraments within the context of the larger community.
Yes. But it kind of gets rushed. It gets with the numbers we have, it's, usually we have one mass that we allow up to 75 children, but they all sit with their families, and then the other, like the Saturday evening mass, we're always fighting, because people want that one, and we're limited to, he said 35, and so we got like 50 that want Saturday, and they can't do it any other way. So this was, they got to choose. We fought so much in the past over, I got, dance rehearsal and tournament, and that we had none of that this year. You told me the date that worked for you. You signed up on a Sign Up Genius, and it was amazing. Now, it did mean that we had a lot of prep here, there, and everywhere. So it was harder on us probably, but on one hand, but it also gave the priest time to talk to families, pray for those children as they're, like we have so-and-so here today and making his First Communion, like it was beautiful and much more intimate. So hoping to keep some of that.
Yeah, that's great. You'll have a lot of people. Who else? Anybody else? Yeah, Myra.
We can you hear me?
Yes.
We're doing the same thing. We're set for December, I think the 15th, and Father and I talked about now I only have 5 kids, but we're doing the same thing, giving the parents the books. for our PSR program, but we only have 5, so we're able to pull them on campus for their sacramental prep classes. But if we can't get the priest to come in, Father's just going to take the time, let the parents sign up for a time that they can come that day, whatever time they can come, to kind of accommodate them, and we'll do the parents too. So doing that. But I'm like Marlene, when we did First Eucharist and we let them, this is our mass schedule, you tell us what mass you want to come to. And it really was really good. It's made us revisit some of the things. But going back to the parents and the books, Tricia picking it up, at first we were kind of struggling, but they came and I met with a parent this morning that didn't realize we had started, but just kind of trying to meet them where they are, and then just doing like a follow-up email or phone call once a week to see what we can do to help. And Google Classroom is working for us. Our teachers, our catechists are posting in Google Classroom, and they're coming back to do that. And some of them that didn't think they could teach are coming back saying, I'm learning and I can do this, So it has been good in that shape and form. So I think it's going back to the parents in a roundabout way, which right now we feel good about. So and we'll see what January brings to us. So, and I know Circles of Care is a whole different curriculum, but if anybody can give me ideas of how they do it in Circles of Care or Circles of Grace, excuse me,
Grace.
I'd like to hear that. Circles of Grace, yeah.
Jane?
I started my Circle of Grace last week with first grade, and I had about 14 kids come to campus for the Circle of Grace. Of course, a lot of the parents opted out, and some just didn't respond to the emails that I sent in the opt-out letters that were sent. But the curriculum in and of itself went really, really well. I had 4 adults there we checked all the temperatures of the kids and did what we needed to do socially distanced. But I really like first grade. I'm teaching 9th grade tonight. I have 9th grade. I'm doing all the teaching of all of the Circle of Grace program. So the 9th graders are coming in tonight, and I'm teaching the 9th grade, and I'm anxious to see 7 opt-out letters sent in. And we have on our campus, kindergarten are physically here, 8th grade are physically here, and our confirmation kids are physically here. So we're very fortunate that our activity center is a place we can sanitize pretty quickly and turn around because classes are not so back to back with one another. But I'm going to see how 9th grade goes, but I really like the first grade, and the curriculum for it looks like kindergarten, 1st and 2nd pretty much focus on the same areas. So it makes it pretty easy for the lesson plan. It varies slightly. But the most challenging I've found so far is 9th grade. There are 4 lessons in the 9th grade program. And I'm like, how am I going to get 4 lessons to an hour and a half, 90 minutes with these kids? So I picked and chose what I wanted to from the curriculum from each of the 4 lessons and did it that way so that I could get some of each of the lessons in the hour and a half time that I'm going to have with the 9th grade tonight. So I covered what I thought was the most important for them to have. And so that's what I'm doing with 9th grade. I'm anxious to see how that goes. I have 2 adults who are coming to help me with the 9th grade tonight. And we did reconciliation on campus too. We're doing that on campus. We started with our parents meeting last week and all but 9 of them came. So, and we're going to do the deanery, the priest met at the deanery. And instead of during we usually have Advent and First Reconciliation tied together. And this year, they're not going to open that to the public. We're just going to do our sacramental prep kids and their families that are going to come on the date that was set aside for the Advent penance service. So we're going to keep that the same.
And that's a deanery based?
That was deanery based. The priests had decided that they wouldn't do an Advent penance service for the parishioners in and of themselves. So he said, we're going to keep that date just for our First Reconciliation students and their families. So that's where we stand.
That's great. I think when we originally talked about the Circle of Grace, when Amy formed the committee, people said that the curriculum was pretty, heavy when you got to some of the grade levels have more than 1 lesson. And that was one of the things that was suggested, just to pull out kind of gravitate to, what's most needed. You know your kids, and you
Right.
also know the sign of the times. And so I think that's a very good way to implement and make sure that you're covering a whole lot. And if there's things that you miss, you can always pick it up later on. But yeah, that's the best you can do with that.
Yeah. Since I've looked at the whole curriculum, K to 12, it's pretty much one build upon the other. But
Right.
the
Yeah.
10th grade lesson was one lesson. I'm like, ooh, easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
We did
Okay.
the 9th grade Circles of Grace already, and our catechist got the important chunks done in an hour and a half. So it's definitely doable if
Right.
you just like take out the really important parts, and they didn't do all the activities. And 9th grade
Yeah.
used to have every activity that every grade also did shoved into that curriculum. So they just kind of skipped a bunch of those and just did more like discussion based on all the important topics. But they got
Yeah.
it done in an hour and a half. So
Yeah.
That's good.
Thank you. That's good to
Alice?
hear.
I saw Alice's hand, then
Yeah.
Tricia.
A couple of quick little things. Circles of Grace. What we did was, after talking with Father Eric, we decided that since most of our students are not coming to Mass at all, we would do it on grade level, but he would start with Mass. So he does Mass in about 40 minutes. His homily is based always on prayer and why they need to pray. And they need to learn the prayers that we gave them in their little handout and that importance of praying. And then after Mass is over, I present Circles of Grace. And so we've done 4th, 5th, 10th, and then next week we do 6th. We're kind of hopping, 6th. We did 3rd as well. We're kind of hopping around with grade levels. We kind of started with the grade levels that we had most of our students registered. And then, so we knew we were getting most of the kids in that particular grade. And it's worked really well. I went back and pulled from 1st and 2nd grade for all my presentation, because if they don't know Circle of Grace means, you can't present the rest of that material. So
Sure.
in my creativity, which I don't normally do real well with some of those things, I got a hula hoop. And I held the hula hoop above my head and brought it down and placed it on the floor. And I asked them who was in that circle besides me. And we talked about who had to be in that circle, the type of people we wanted in our lives. And then I kind of, the next 10 or 15 minutes, concentrated on that particular lesson. So I felt like that if we don't teach them the Circle of Grace concept, even no matter what grade, then they really wouldn't know what we're there talking about. And so Father Eric was even impressed that, I got a hula hoop and, decided that's how I was going to handle that. And it was really kind of cute. So, reconciliation, we had to cancel our first meeting because it was the weekend of the hurricane and we didn't know what was going to happen. But we are way down in registration numbers this year. So what we're doing is we're going to have a parent-student class on the first weekend of November. We will give them handouts. And then the first Saturday of December, we're going to do reconciliation in the morning, starting at 9:30. And because we also have Hispanic students, we'll be able to bring in Father Tim to kind of work with those kids as well. But we only have about 40 total, including the Catholic school students who belong to our parish. We have a very small group this year. And I guess we haven't talked about this, but my main concern is confirmation. All my parents came to a parent meeting. We had 2 different ones. We split the grade levels, gave them the material. They took home the books. I had a confirmation prep meeting 2 weeks ago. Maybe a third of the kids showed up with their parent for that meeting. And I kind of asked how they were doing with their work and their book and their lessons and stuff. Only had 4 students tell me that they had even opened up their book. So, and parents are just like sitting there. And one mother says, well, I gave it to you to do, that type of thing. But we're not seeing them actually do the work at home, unfortunately. So that's a major concern. I had one student say, well, I don't have the dates for classes. I went, okay. So here's this mom who came to a parent meeting who knew we were doing homeschooling, but yet the child didn't know we were even doing homeschooling. And supposedly he's supposed to be doing this work. So it's kind of a few things going on. And I'm really concerned more about my confirmation students than I really am about my second graders. I feel like those second graders, I can catch them. And if I have to catch them up next year or something, we will. But confirmation, if you don't have them this year, then you've lost them.
Have they picked their sponsors yet?
They're in the process of doing that.
I think sometimes some of the accountability can be supported by the sponsors.
Yeah, that's what I'm
know.
hoping.
Yeah, because that was always something that was always, parallel. You have the parents, but you have the sponsor whom they've chosen, and
Right.
then you have the young person. And so that could probably support the formation part of it and the dialogue, because that's one of the most important things with confirmation is the
Right.
dialogue, the questions.
Yes, we have. Yeah, I gave them a whole packet with everything in it. So, and it was kind of interesting. One student said, "Oh man, this is so much to do. My brother didn't do all this," and I said, "Yeah, he did, but I didn't give it to him all at once." So I gave him the sponsor form. I gave him the sponsor interview stuff I do. I gave him the saint report. I gave him their letter to Father Eric all at once and said, "Here's everything that has to be done." Instead of me constantly begging them from time to time. Plus, I didn't know how I was going to get it from them back.
Right.
Return. So, yeah, I'm seem to be more struggling and more concerned with confirmation than I am with my other grades right now.
Hey, Wes, do you have any thoughts on that?
As far as the confirmation age and all that?
No, just motivation for confirmation candidates to kind of start diving into their sacramental prep work. You can think about it. And I'll get back.
It's back to the age-old kind of question when it comes down to youth ministry, and it's just these kids are so inundated right now, and you put one more thing on their plate, and usually when it comes to us, like they tend to push us to the side. I did like the idea of having something right after Mass. That way it's like you're already there, might as well just stay. That seems to me a little more convenient working with them. I like that idea. I can't remember exactly who that was. I did like that idea because I remember back whenever I was in PSR at St. George back in the day, our PSR nights were after 6 p.m. Mass. So it went from 7 to like 8:30 or 7. And so we went to 6 p.m. Mass, and like most of the people that were in class just went to 6 p.m. Mass. And then we went to our catechism after that. And it's like, since we're here, we might as well do this. But then you're also talking about motivation to do the work at home. And I can't really offer you a solution there as far as getting kids to do this at home, other than maybe like offering we had an idea at the beginning of all this quarantine, which was offering Zoom meetings for parents or students that would like to, or like enrichment, saying like, hey parents, if you need some enrichment here, helping your students work through these topics, that way you can feel empowered at home to do this with them. There's a way you can, like, offering once a week or once every other week Zoom meetings with parents to like have them, help them through that, do that work at home. Because that's a really odd age, man, especially to tell a kid you have to do this in order to do this. Like, it's a really hard age because they're kind of like not really accepting authority right then and there. And they're usually focusing on things like college and prom and just anything else, sports, like that. All these other things are in the forefront of their mind before the sacraments, at least for the majority of these kids. So it's really hard to get their attention, especially whenever we're all digital, or like, if you're doing a digital media and all that stuff. So I can definitely relate. I mean, I definitely hear the struggle. I mean, I do some thinking on that for you and do some discerning on that, some praying. But right now, all I can think of is to offer help for parents that are maybe struggling to get their kids engaged, and say, look, here's ways in which you can talk to your kids about this. If you're looking for ways in which you can feel more confident to address these things with your kids, teach them to your kids and have them respond back. Again, echoing what Dina was saying earlier about having the parents be the primary catechists in the home.
And the sponsors being that support for confirmation, because that's where I think you'll have a lot of, a lot more companionship going on. And because it sounds like the response from the mom was, well, I gave you the book, so it's basically like another subject.
Yep.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
instead of like, let's walk together in this. So I think that's for sponsors, that might be your best bet right now in this
Right.
strange time. And also still rely upon the Holy Spirit, because the Holy Spirit's going to be filling in a lot of gaps this year of things that we're really trying to pursue. But at the same time, it's just difficult because of the situation that we're living in.
I was
Yeah.
going to
Thanks.
recommend, because Miss Dina kind of mentioned it, like sponsorship, and like using your sponsor, or like even like the parents are important, obviously, like it's the first formators and everything, but having the sponsor become like a more active part of the process. Because my cousin actually is going through confirmation right now, not in Baton Rouge, she's in Houston, but I'm her sponsor. And I called her. I mean, she asked me to be her sponsor years ago because, I mean, I would be the person. Obviously, I work at the diocese. I would be the person in the family. But I just called her because I felt like I knew that I come to these meetings and I hear how y'all are talking. And like, obviously, I don't work specifically in parish ministry, but I'm like, these kids have no idea like what's going on. Like I know what all of y'all are doing, but like they don't see the stuff that's going on in the process of like y'all trying to make this as easy as possible and also as fun as possible. And I just called her and like we sat down for like an hour, like and FaceTimed, and I was just like, so what do you like want out of confirmation? Like what do you want? How can I pray for you? And starting a conversation where like, especially a lot of these kids, like they aren't comfortable talking about their faith. And usually the sponsor is someone who is like a person that they see as someone who is faithful. So like definitely encouraging the sponsors to be an active part of this process, because the sponsor is probably going to be the best bet to do that. I mean, they obviously are looking up to them already to ask them in some way. So unless you're like me and I asked my godmother, because that was kind of what you did. But yeah, I think that using the sponsors is a really unique opportunity. So I would try that too.
They can also do a count up to confirmation, so it's a timeline, but it's also a way to kind of keep them honed in on like what's next. So once the sponsors hop in, then they can be added to that communication. So we're counting up to confirmation. This is where we are. This is where, you can be in the next few weeks. So that type of communication too would help bringing those sponsors in and getting their emails and putting them all in that loop too. Michael, and you were going to say something?
Yeah, I think something that's really cool, if you have a way to, like we use Flocknote to communicate to all of our kids, and have the sponsors in a different group. I think a really cool way to get them at least like somewhat involved, if everything that they're doing is by themselves at home and not with a group, is to like ask them different questions and have them be able to respond in like a group forum kind of thing, even if it's just like email. Because we had our hour of reflection on Sunday where our sponsors come, and we just did like kind of a talk and then adoration. And I think a lot of the sponsors realized that, and we do a sponsor session too, but I think a lot of the sponsors realized at the hour of reflection that their sponsorship doesn't start when they got asked and end when they get confirmed. Like it's a lifelong journey. When I asked a lot of the kids like out loud, tell me why you chose your sponsor, a lot of them were like, I had to like seriously think. So then they got to talk to their sponsor and see why they chose them. And I had the sponsors pray over them, like with their arms over their shoulder, like they do for when they get confirmed, and like pray out loud over them. And I think that was the first time that a lot of them had ever prayed out loud, and especially with their sponsor. And that was a really unique moment. And a lot of them like gave me a lot of feedback on that. And so we do different questions throughout the week sometimes where I'll be like, comment here, like why you chose your saint. And then they just like start a little comment for them. And for the competitive kids, when one of them answers, then they all answer, and then they don't want to be left out. So then a lot of them answer that. So I think that's a cool way to be able to get them involved if they're not like in a community doing that already in person.
Yeah.
What are you using, Michael?
Do what?
What are you using, like technology wise? So you said Flocknote, but how are you doing like the conversation back and forth?
So Flocknote, when you send a text or an email, there's a comments option, and you can mark your comment as private or public. And so they can comment through there. And if it's public, then everyone can see it. So if I put like comment your saint and their feast day, and you comment and make it public, then I can reply to your comment. I can see that you commented, and then other people see it and also comment. We do that a lot with like prayer intentions. I mark all of those private, like when we do like prayer intention ones. But if we're just doing like a, how did you pray this week? Then they can mark it as public.
So it allows you to set that up ahead of time to make their comments public?
Every time they comment, there's a little box that they click private. And if they don't click private, it's automatically public. But you can also switch that in the settings. You can make every comment automatically private, and they have to uncheck the box to make it public.
Okay, so I think that's how ours is set up. That would be amazing. Okay, thank you.
And you have a group set up in Flocknote for them, right? So that's your
I have
group, your
a confirmation
group.
2020 group and then a sponsor group. And they're
And
also
that's all right.
intertwined in a group.
Okay.
I have that too, but I had no idea that the comments could be public like that. So I'm using, I have like a Padlet set up for that. And then I've also found it really good to, like right before our meetings, like I send them questions, because some of them, you ask a question, they're like, you know, they're not going to say anything, but they'll type it and write it. And I've been getting some really awesome responses that way. So, okay, but I'm glad I can save a step if I can just do it all in my Flocknote.
I think that's a really awesome idea, Michaelin, just because you're using like their own, how they interact on a daily basis with social media. You're using that same sort of interaction that like, hey, if this, like, I want to be a part of the group, so I'm going to contribute content to the group. And I don't want to be left out of the group. I think that's a really good, because it kind of plays, I mean, it's a little psychological warfare at the end of the day, but let's be real, it works. There's a reason why social media is popular.
Yeah, and it doesn't send a bunch of notifications either, which I think is good. So like if I send a text like, why did you choose your sponsor? As people reply, I get notifications like either email or text that they're replying, but like Ms. Dina's not going to get 46 responses, or her phone's not going to go off. It's just going to go into the forum. So if you just wanted to go back and see it, you just click back on the text message and you can open up all the comments and read through it. You don't like,
and if you're using something, if you're using something like Google Classroom, there's also ways in which you can interact with your students that way. You just have to make sure you're on top of policing those comments. You want to watch out for any kind of rogue comment or anything like that. You just kind of have to stay on top of that. But I think that's the only drawback to that strategy. I think it's pretty good.
Flocknote makes it really easy to discard comments that.
So it doesn't bog down their notifications the way GroupMe does.
Nope.
Awesome. Thank you.
Right.
Anytime anyone replies to you, if you're the admin or super admin, you're going to get a notification unless you clicked not to every time you send out a note or a text, but it doesn't do anything to them.
Okay.
Which makes it less annoying, which makes it them inclined to like actually click on it and be like, I wonder if I'm the only one who responded. And then they see a bunch of other people and nothing's dinging and parents don't get annoyed.
Yeah. Make sure that you send a note to Flocknote, send it to Matthew Sewell and let him know how you're using that, because they really grow and they flourish with these ideas. So just send him a little note. He's been working with the diocese to kind of go global with Flocknote. It hasn't gotten to that point yet because of some of the other changes, but I think that he'll appreciate the way that you guys are using it for confirmation, and it'll help other people too in other areas. So we're talking about communication, which is super important, and how to communicate with our young people in this virtual way that they're already used to using. So email, phone calls, probably not. Texting, maybe, but Flocknote is that central kind of look with privacy settings. So if anybody needs more information on Flocknote, just send me an email. I'll let you know.
They also have preset Bible studies or stuff through them. So you can just like select a group and then every day automatically it'll send it. They do that in Advent too. Like every Monday they send a verse or something and you just click this in this group and press send, and then they do everything for you.
Wow. Okay, that's really good. Yeah, it's an excellent resource. It really is. Okay. Anybody else have any? We're getting close to our end time. So for those that have to hop off at noon, I want to honor that. And then for those of us who want to stay, there's a few more things. Let me just go through some of these things real quick. On the agenda, I just kind of put what we're working on. I always think that it's really important for you guys to know exactly what we're doing beyond our share gatherings. Right now, we're having transitional opportunities with the Secretariat because the model has changed for the Secretariat, although our grouping has remained the same. But we have a new secretary who is Father Ryan Halford. So he's our collaborator and visionary from Bishop Duca through the Secretariat and then across through the other secretariats. So there'll be a whole lot of different various communications. Instead of some areas working in silos, it's bringing the diocese and the chancery more together to be more impactful to serve the parishes. So that's a big thing. Of course, our transition with our staff right now with Barry that I talked about earlier, wishing him everything, and then opening the doors for a new associate director to come. Also at the request of Sarah No and with Melissa's help, I'm going to write a sacramental prep kind of lesson plan for First Reconciliation and First Eucharist. We did it for confirmation a couple of years ago, and Sarah asked if we could put something together. So that's in the mix. I'm hoping to have that done by the end of this week. We are in the midst of updating sacramental guidelines. Initially, it was for confirmation, but now they've said go ahead and do all the sacramental guidelines for all the sacraments of initiation, not just confirmation and reconciliation. So our team is working on that with gathering information from our pre-survey that we're about to kind of go through on Friday, and then getting a team of people to make sure that what we're incorporating into it is like true, like canon law and stuff like that. The next team will be a review team. So that's going to be a team of parish catechetical leaders that can offer insight into if the guidelines look like they're practical. So I'm probably going to be calling on a lot of you to take a look at the edits and to give us insight. And then the final piece of it is kind of the things that we're doing here is sharing good practices that can change. Sacramental guidelines don't include good practices. And so it's not an intentional thing. They just never thought about including that. So I think that that's something that can change. So that's due on January 27th. You'll be hearing from us on that. MAT registrations are coming up. And then if are happening right now, so ministry and theology classes are getting full. So make sure you encourage your catechists to participate in those too, as well as the parents. And then Wes and Nicole every Wednesday at 10 o'clock have a youth and young adult ministry update. So if anybody's working with youth and young adult, make sure that you hop on their forums too. In our next share gatherings like these forums will be November 3rd and November 17th. And our next workshop is going to be November 12th, which is with a representative from the National Catholic Partnership on Disability. So she's not necessarily going to focus on curriculum content, but she's going to focus on the whole broad spectrum of disability, from learning disabilities to hearing to vision, handicaps and things like that. So I wanted to introduce this National Catholic Partnership on Disability so you guys can have kind of the insight into ministering with people in the entire parish on different needs that they have based upon their disabilities. And I found them very informative. All right. Any last thoughts for a closing prayer? And then we can continue. Yes, Nicole.
Hey y'all. So just an announcement. We have a theology on tap this week. It's usually for like young adults and whatnot, but it's going to be a virtual webinar on faithful citizenship and political responsibility. So if you have any questions or if you work with teens who are like voting age, like people who are like, like junior, seniors in high school and stuff, or like, yeah, if you know people, or if you're just interested in Catholic social teaching and how the Catholic Church recommends voting, I guess, but like obviously not like telling you how to vote, but informed voting. We are going to have a theology on tap. You have to register, so I can put the link.
Pop that link in there.
Yeah, the link is I just sent. You have to register to attend, but it's going to be a webinar like the other workshops that we do where it's only like the person talking. It's going to be with Rob Tassman, who is the executive director of the Louisiana Conference of Catholic Bishops, and he's a lobbyist for the church at the Capitol. So I'm super excited about it. So just make sure you register. No age, like any age it's open to anyone. So
Yeah, it's going to be really good. So important right now to focus on the Catholic vision, you know, of society, and not voting for a person specifically, but the vision. So faithful citizenships kind of helps, you know, inform the person, the voter, on what are the important issues that we are called to pay attention to, and then not directing people towards any candidates, but what are the issues that the Catholic Church and literally Christianity finds as super important, and at the same time, which candidates hold those true and faithful. So,
Yep.
Wes, did
Yeah.
you have a comment on that?
No,
sir?
I just wanted to echo what Dina and Nicole are saying, that this is going to be an attempt to, at the end of the day, restore personal discernment back into the election, the voting process, and how do we as Catholics exist in a culture. Because, and instead of just like blindly saying, oh, this person's this party, I'm voting, or this person's this, I'm voting, this person's with this, so I'm doing this. It's like, instead of these big old overarching fluff themes that are kind of just hitting us in our face as a culture right now, we can really truly learn kind of like the art of discernment when it comes to this, and restore that little personal element to voting, and how to vote Catholic. So it's going to be a really awesome time, y'all. I'm excited. I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Rob Tasman's great. Okay, we're going to go ahead and close out in prayer, and those that want to stay on, we can stay for what Barry would call the parking lot. Yeah.
Do we have a question?
Wait.
Oh, okay. You sure? Okay.
Well, no, it's real quick.
Yeah.
RCIA. Who do we go to with questions? Because we're all starting up that ministry. And of course, we're wondering, how do we do the rites and the welcomings and without touching people to sign and all that kind of good stuff. So,
oh, you're talking about the logistics behind RCIA.
Yes.
You can send me
Yeah.
your questions, and I can talk to Father Tom for you. I mean, of
Okay.
course, you know, the bishop and the priest are setting those standards for your parishes, but I think that's a great
Okay.
question. So just send
Yeah,
them to me,
because I will.
and we can, I can definitely
Just in
kind of help
general.
coordinate that.
Okay. Thanks.
That's a really good question. I know. I probably know what the answers are going to be too,
Yeah.
but send me anything that you have discernment wise on that, and we'll be able to help you. Okay, I'm going to read our prayer. This prayer was given to me by Marian Hill. Miss Hill was one of our, well, she was a math teacher for a while at St. Thomas More, and then she was the parish religious coordinator at St. Thomas More, and she would always give me these little prayers. So I really appreciate. I hang them on my wall just so I can remember them. So I wanted to share it with you. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, help me to live this day quietly and easily, to lean upon your great strength, trustfully, restfully, to wait for the unfolding of your will, patiently, serenely, to meet others peacefully, graciously, to face tomorrow confidently, courageously, in the strength that you gave. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you all for coming. Those who need to hop off, we love you. We miss you. Take care. And then those who want to stay, we'll hang out for a little bit. Have a great day. Okay. All right, good. Hey. So what's up?
You know, I just needed like a little bit of encouragement, because like yesterday about a month ago, I had a family who wanted to do their sacraments somewhere else because their child goes to school at a Catholic school. And so I said, you know what, you can look into it. And if they're doing something like crazy, drastically different, and that's like rainbows and butterflies, and that's something we need to like look into, then you can look into it and then let me know how it goes. So she comes back to me and says, yeah, everything is being done in the classroom. I don't have to do anything at home, So I talked to Father about it, and Father says, call the parish and find out. Well, you know, come to find out, they're doing the exact same thing we are. They're going to get a book sent home, little miscommunication there. So, you know, I called back the mom and let her know. And her response was pretty much like, well, I think it's time we looked into switching parishes, because this is my parish and not my kids' parish or my kids' church. And it just like, oh, it's just like hurt my heart to see a family go because they felt the need to be included more at school by participating in a parish activity, who they won't be participating in anything because everything's being done at home. And so I'm just like struggling with that. This family has 5 kids and they are in church here faithfully every week. And so I'm just struggling with that.
Yeah, that's a deferment to a second grader making a decision, which is difficult. So this is the second conversation I've had with somebody in 2 days about the same situation. I actually had a priest talk to me about a parishioner who went to school someplace else outside the parish, even though the parish has a school, and wanted to make their sacramental prep at the other school because that's where their friends are. And so he's talking to them about the aspect of community and being in community. If Father Martin were there, I tell you what he'd tell you, and he'd be like, too bad, so sad. You're going to make it in your home parish because that's where you committed. So, if I knew who it was.
I would loved Father's response. I mean, Father said, they have to make it here, and so,
right.
And I loved that he didn't back down on that either. Because I do think we do have a lot of people who say, oh, Father Martin didn't let people out, but now maybe we can.
Right. Yeah.
But he wasn't saying that either. So, I've left it to where, okay, now you've got to go talk to Father about it. So it puts me out of it. But
right. That's what I was going to tell you, because now it's out of your hands. Because if once she says, well, maybe we're just going to switch parishes because that's where, our children feel like they belong, because the school is connected. But I'm going to tell you, once 8th grade's over, they're going to be out of there. So I think Father has that pastoral care component of inviting people. Sometimes you let people go and then eventually they're going to come back. And that's the difference. And so what happens is that there's a dynamic that people rely heavily on the school than on their parish. And it happens when kids get into the 8th grade, they go into high school, and the high school becomes their church and their community center. And that's why sometimes youth ministry, doesn't have a lot of young people, because they're getting their youth ministry experience at their school. Parish mission, school missions and things like that. I'm not saying that's bad, but I'm saying that everything that the parish is used to do is now being placed in the hands of the schools, because they want to have their young kids have these, really great experiences. And sometimes the churches can't do that, practically speaking. So I'm with Father, to stand your ground. If they have 5 children, and it's weird with St. Patrick's, right? Because you're open to other schools and they start forming relationships there, even though they're going to church at St. Patrick's, they have these other outside relationships. And I'm guessing it's STM. So yeah, I could probably guess a family too. So I would definitely just put it in the hands of Father, and I would follow up with the mom if you haven't talked to her since the last time y'all talked. And she said, we may just leave. I just send her a note and say, I hear you, I understand you, and kind of give that affirmation, but at the same time, tell them how, impactful it is to have their family, celebrate and worship together as a community at St. Patrick's, because that's where they live. I'm guessing they live in the area. And that, if it's STM, that STM is a great community too. But at the same time, it's okay for them to have 2 communities. That's okay with it. But to come home to make, the sacraments is something very powerful, which they have already committed their children. And last time I heard, parents, if you're living under my roof, this is where our commitment is, although we share our community time with our STM family during school. And so kind of give her some of the words that she can think about. I doubt seriously. I can't even imagine that they would follow up with that. Father Michael will swallow up anybody, he'll take them. But at the same time, where's the greater lesson in that for the family as far as parents? So think about that too. But I'm glad that you deferred to Father, because there's some things. And I think that the way that the pastors handle it would be different than how they see us. talking to them about it too.
Well, right. And especially with this family, because our kids are in school together too. And so it really needed a deferment, because for me, it was like my emotions are in it too, because I certainly don't want to see that family leave. And so I was really glad to be able to say, you know, diocesan policy says you have to run in your home parish, and I have to defer to Father. And so I was very thankful to have that in my back pocket, that I was not the decision maker.
Well, and here's the other side of it. And this is what Father Martin really tried to help support other pastors on, was the fact that the other pastor would not give permission. That's the other side of it.
Mm-hmm.
So even if the people decide, hey, we want to make our sacrament as, you know, another church, that pastor has to give permission. Mm-hmm. And if they don't, they're like, no, go back to your home community, then that settles it. Mm-hmm. So that's where, you know, you got to make sure that the pastor's thinking about the family and the people and the church community they're already in. And at the same time, that think about dollar signs, you know, because I'm just going to say it's a reality in some places, you know, so to really not invite the family to leave their home base, but to welcome them into a school community, because you're supporting the ministry of Catholic, you know, formation for children. But at the same time, help them, you know where they planted and how important that is and robust for St. Patrick's family to have that community there too, because their kids are going to be saying, well, where's so-and-so? Because there are going to be St. Patrick families that go to STM that have their kids prepped at St. Patrick's. You know, so they're going to be like, well, where's so-and-so? Well, how come they're there?
And I guess we're always going to be in that situation, with that being our feeder school. And so I guess it's always been and always will be that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess, you know, I just need to talk it out and to know that, like, I did everything I could. I felt like I was really there for the, you know, the mom, and to kind of be that, you know, like listening board for her and to hear it out, you know, but also I was just surprised. I'm like, but all of your kids have been baptized here. It just means something. Your older two have gone through the sacraments here. And so you would think it means something, but you're right. It is putting your church in the hands of a second grader. So
but the prep is the same. I'm telling you, Sarah's not meeting in person. I don't think she is.
No, I called Sarah.
At all.
We were like,
yeah.
I already knew what she was doing. And I was like, are y'all like doing something completely different? Because, you know, my other STM families are going to be calling. And she was like, we were literally doing the exact same thing. And she was like, Melissa, no. And the form says they would have to have permission outside, you know, whatever. She's like, it's all covered. The mom is just hearing what she wants to hear. I'm like, yep, you're right.
Right.
You're right.
That's right. Right. So the other thing would be, because in just in that, being in that other position where Sarah was, when people would call me, I'm like, well, what's wrong with your home church? You know, if I was going to say no. And I said, I really think that you should reconsider. So again, it's the receiving and too. And I don't know if Sarah's talked to them, you know, about that, but maybe they're talking to other parents too, saying, well, all your friends are making their first Eucharist. Yeah. Why don't, well, I mean, but they're making them at the other church too. So I'm interested to hear what Father says.
I think there's also, for people that have a lot of non-denom friends, especially, that the church hopping in those atmospheres is really huge, because you just go where your friends are, or you go where you like the music, or you go where you like the preacher, instead of like the tradition part of Catholicism that, like, it didn't matter if all my friends made their sacraments at STM. My parents got married at Mercy. I did all my sacraments at Mercy. That's where parishioners, that's where I went to school. It didn't matter if I liked Aloysius Youth Group better.
Right.
We did sacraments at Mercy. There's not the same statement and like stance on that like tradition and other ones. And so I find that with a lot of our parents that I know have friends that go to like the chapel on campus or Acacia or I can't even think of any other ones, whichever ones are the ones on LSU's campus, that they are more prone to just kind of like go wherever.
Are you seeing that with your homeschool families as well?
Actually, most of my homeschool families are the most Catholic ones that we have, because they do Catholic co-op homeschooling. So,
well,
but they definitely church hop.
The most like Catholic and like the most like into everything, and they know so much. But I also find that because they're exposed to so many other groups of Catholics, that they tend to be in a lot of different places and not like pick a home, because over the years I've had so many homeschool families in my youth group who are not St. Patrick families, but
Correct.
they, but we're just going to this youth group because they just went to everybody's youth group, but they didn't have like a home. So I don't know,
They had a home.
New wave of homeschooling.
Right.
Yeah, we did. I think we have a lot more of that now with now that a lot of our priests are getting big, that people are switching as a priest, which I don't think denotes the entire space that you find a home in, but I think it can be a big like grab factor. So
and I think that's where I need to remember that where this will come up a lot with my St. Thomas More families, because of the strong presence that Father Alelo holds versus the
and on my Tuesday tidbits for my parents, last week I did a Father Josh's video on Lexio, and one of them responded and they're like, "Is that Aloysius in the background? Where is he at now?" And I was like, now please feel free to go to church wherever you want, but don't just be like, "Oh, this video was cool, now I'm gonna go follow this priest,"
So this leads to really a larger question: is what are people seeking? What are they seeking? Because I always like there are priests that come and go, and there's some that are more dynamic than others, but they're all lovingly committed to their vocation. But if people are seeking a community other than in Jesus Christ, then I would see that there's going to be an opportunity to hop around, because they're searching for something other than what we find in every place, which is our Lord. I mean, I know people have personal relationships with priests. They get aggravated. I mean, when you work for church, sometimes you get totally aggravated with your pastor. And but you still love them, right? Just because of the ordination, right? But at the same time, it's like, what are they seeking? That's what I would ask. It's like, well, what are you looking for?
That's exactly what Pam said when I talked to her about it. She was like, "Is this mom looking for a sense of belonging?" And I was like, maybe so, because she said to me, it is just now that the 8th grade boy moms are like starting to talk to me or accept me. And it just blew my mind, because I was just, I've never heard anything like that from this mom specifically. And, she's obviously got 4 more kids behind it. So I don't, we're out, of St. Thomas More after this. And so it's just interesting. It just kind of fascinates me. And I was like, well, don't put all of the St. Thomas More families based on that one grade. And I was like, a lot of the families I can't relate to, because if their 8th grader is their youngest kid, then they're done. They're not raising babies. I'm like, you're raising babies, you're raising little ones. It's just so different. Your priorities may be different, So I hope that I gave her a lot of encouragement too there and whatever, but that's a societal thing too, and there's a lot of parishes, a lot of, schools, and just growing up there and then working there, there's opportunities for people to form community. I think the sad thing about right now is the ministries are in such flux over there right now, that the community that she may be seeking is in complete transition, and that the school itself is impactful. There's lots of groups, there's lots of different groups, there's lots of groups that if you've been together with them since preschool, then there's going to be one different kind of family setting. And then if you're just coming in later, then there's going to be other, well, I don't know them, they got to St. Patrick's. So it's a lot of that going on at the same time. But I'm just wondering if I know for here, what are people seeking, like you said, and are they even able to find it in our parishes right now, because we don't have the normal things going on. Like her kids were involved in, her kids were altar servers before here, and her kids, her oldest was in youth group here. And so it's just without having those things to come back on campus for that sense of community, their only sense of community is in the school.
Right.
And I don't knock that, but it's just but that's still not it's not really it's not their church community.
Yeah, and this is a
different.
temporary change, right?
Right.
Right now, we're all in this temporary mode. We'll probably end up lasting a year, from April to April, maybe a little longer. And so there's this time to like fill in those gaps. But there's no altar serving at the other place, right?
Mhm.
There's none of that happening. And so I really think you're right. Her daughter has found this sense of community with her friends at STM. It's not an uncommon problem. It will continue to happen. And, some people switched parishes, some never did, and so it just depends. And I think this one's a little bit closer to your heart because you're friends,
Yeah.
and you're like, well, why do you want, you can go visit the neighbors, just come home.
Right.
Right. Like that's just as simple as that. It's like, in all honesty, Father Michael's not all that cracked up. He's supposed to be, like Father Michael's great, but he's not God.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? He's not God. Sometimes he thinks he's God, but he's not God. And that's, I can say that because I tell him, you're not Jesus. But, and I think a lot too has a lot to do with like the streaming. So a lot of the pastors that were able to hop on real quick and do their streaming masses, it's been something that has captured people. I mean, definitely his preaching, attracts a lot of people. But at the same time,
it's very interesting because maybe you wouldn't have gone to somebody else's mass. But I did. I had another family who has been here forever, and she did not sign her child up for PSR this year. And she was like, well, you know what? My kids have really enjoyed listening to Father Alolo online. And so it's just really bizarre to me. I'm just like, I don't understand. I'll listen to whoever too. I love listening to Father Josh and whoever, but I mean, this is church.
I think that also comes from like where a community is being formed for you, and you just have to walk into it, and then who is willing to forge their own community. And right now, if school is still a community you can walk into, and church, because all of our ministries aren't really happening, isn't as readily accessible, then they're like, well, then I'm going to forge my own, but it's going to be away from this because you're not providing what you once did in the same capacity. So now my kids found something in school, and that's the community that we're going to. Or Father Michael's stuff is online, and we can choose that. So they think that's like choosing their own faith life, which it is. But if it's in like juxtaposition with like where you're committed, it just doesn't show the grace that needs to.
Right. And then my challenge is after COVID's over, or at least under control, and people are allowed to, go back to mass in a somewhat normal place. When is that streaming going to stop? When is it going to stop? Now, the bishop streaming from the cathedral is one thing, because a lot of dioceses have that. But when are we going to stop streaming? Because there are perfectly healthy people that can be in church right now, and they're choosing not to. And I'm talking people that are my age and older, right? And then people that are younger, because it's more
my age.
Yeah, and people are younger.
I see them out to eat, and I'm like, and did you sign up for mass?
Right. So that's the other thing, and it's good that I think the blessing is that we got to hear a whole lot of other homilies. You can go back and listen to other people's preaching, because I listen to 3 masses a day, like literally. I got EWTN, you got the bishop, Father Michael, in the evening. So, that's good. But at the same time, we go back to what are you seeking? And then also, I just wrote too, building up the community that God has called you into. Because have they really truly discerned that God wants them to change communities? Where's the discernment in that? It can't be just this feeling decision. Like you've planted roots there, you've got your children baptized there. Maybe, and God has called you, even in the thick of things, to stay here and be a part of the school community, but at the same time, be committed to the community that God has called you to. And then why do you feel like you've been called away from it?
Yeah.
Because a second grader said, I want to hang out with my friends, and everybody gets to see each other in their pretty dresses, which may or may not happen come Easter.
Right. Because it didn't happen there that way. And so, yeah, I wish they knew more. I wish that they were like discerning it more, and it's just apparent that it didn't happen that way, so it is what it is, and I need to let it go.
But I also would not doubt the ministry that's taking place at St. Patrick's either. Like I wouldn't let I wouldn't let my mind wander like, what have I done or not done? You know, what can I do more? What can I do less? You know, like I wouldn't beat yourself up to think that this is solely the responsibility of the parish staff, that they're not doing anything, because I would definitively contradict that and say you're doing even more, you know, communicating.
And I had to remind myself a lot of that yesterday after the conversation, because I was like, Melissa, you have 120 kids that you need to be ministering to, plus your youth group, and so this cannot be getting you down all day.
But it's the one. It's the one, right?
What is the one? With me?
Yeah. I think after I really want to know what Father would tell her, and plus he has a relationship with them too. So and maybe that's another thing too. I'm telling you, when new pastors come, people, even though they don't know him, like I love Father Michelle, I think he's just wonderful. They kind of go, you know, like when Father Michael came to STM, there was a mass exodus. People left. Like people left. They like the older people. They're like, we're checking out. He done, you know, whatever. And at the same time, you got these young people going, oh, he was great. So it's like, that's not the people like, don't you like Father Michael? I was like, I love Father Michael. Do I like everything he does? No. You know, do I love, I mean, but I'm not there for Father Michael. Like that, he's not my end all, be all, you know? I mean,
I think that's like the best thing about like these groups of people meeting. It was just like to hear other people's struggles and everything today. It's like, I'm like, and not just their struggles, but also like what's working. But it's like, okay, we're not going through this alone. We're all going through the same exact thing together. And so to hear other people talk about it is just, it's so encouraging.
And what I like about these forums is that there's so many different people from all over the diocese. Like Miss Martha and Miss Gloria, they hop on all the time, even though they don't say a whole lot, they are soaking it in. And that's what I'd like to kind of continue, you know, throughout. It's having online discussions, but also meeting in person later. So take heart, my sweetie. Thanks. Doing a good job there.
See you tomorrow, Wes.
See y'all.
All right, bye. Bye, y'all. Thanks.
Bye, y'all.